Hey guys, you're hanging out with us in Colorado. This is my mom, Camille.
Hi.
And roped her into helping me out with the unboxing of the Propella. She's about to go out and ride her own bike. And they're kind of similar. Propella has moved from a 28-inch to 32-inch wide tire to make it a little bit more comfortable, not unlike her gravel grinder tires. I think that's cool. Comfort is a big deal to them. They've added some spacers to bring the bars up, but otherwise it's just kind of a sleek city bike. It's a 7-speed. It retails for $12.99 if you get those 7 gears. Otherwise it's $11.99, so it's relatively affordable. Brent reviewed this model, the 2.0. I'm looking at the 2.2 with those little incremental upgrades. He weighed it at about 35 pounds. I'm very excited to see how this one weighs in, because lightweight e-bikes are sort of hard to come by. They've updated their battery mount. I think they've also updated their disc brakes, so it's a little bit nicer. Shimano. We're gonna go ahead and do an unboxing, and they even sent me the $299 upgrade front carbon fiber wheel. Very excited to check that out. Shipping to the US and Canada is it's like under $100. I think the assembly is going to be a little bit more involved with this one. You can see the box is a little bit smaller. I'm excited to see how well it's packed and everything. There was a little bit of a bump in. They've done crowdfunding. This company, I think they started in 2015 and they used Kickstarter, and then in 2016, they did another crowdfunding. They've delivered these on time. I think it was July 2018, and their next batch is in December. So it's these like iterative improvements. They only have one bike, and it's either a single speed or the 7-speed, and that allows them to keep it pretty cheap. Only one frame size, one color. It's beautiful. It's cool. Let's get into it and do that unboxing. So that was actually easier than I expected. It was super lightweight. What do you think?
I think it's a beautiful bike and very lightweight. Love the tires. They're gorgeous.
Yeah, this
And the
like
blue
anodized.
matches me.
It does, yeah. You've got the right outfit. We might have to get you on this thing once it's fully unpacked. I actually have a bike stand. I'm gonna raise this up. We were being extra careful with dropouts down here on the fork because it looks like it did ship with those plastic things that kind of fit right in there, and it keeps them from punching through the bottom of the box. Even though there was a bit of a punch through with UPS shipping it, I'm not seeing any damage. They've got some extra warning labels and looks like some good instructions over here. So very excited. I'm gonna put it up on the stand and make some more progress. Okay, my Propella didn't come with any tools, so these are what I'm using. I've got a crank tool that's going to help me put the pedals on. Just a park tool with a 4mm, 5mm, and 6mm hex, and then some poly grease from Park Tool. I'm going to use that on the threads there for the pedals. It's interesting, they gave me 2 saddles. So there's like a comfort version right here, and then a more aggressive, sporty version. I like that they both have blue accents. I mean, you can really see that all over the bike. So they've got these little metallic locking rings for both of the grips, the base of the battery. The top of the battery has a blue button and blue LEDs, that anodized deep dish rim design. Really appreciate that. Here are the Shimano sort of upgraded calipers that they were talking about. This is the 2.2, so it's just a slight incremental upgrade from the 2. I love that over here we've got a plastic slap guard sticker to protect the frame, because under this black is silver. You know, it's just an aluminum alloy frame, so if you get a little nick, it's going to show up. You could always use like a permanent marker or something, maybe some touch-up paint. But yeah, this front caliper, because the wheel hasn't been installed yet, if you're pulling on the left brake lever, that's gonna activate that. You don't want to do it because it can actually kind of get the brake pads stuck together. So that's something that happens a lot when you're assembling an e-bike, especially with hydraulic brakes. You're like pulling on, maybe you're just grabbing the handle for stability when you're assembling it, and then the pads get stuck together and they're hard to get apart. You have to like stick a screwdriver in there and kind of wiggle it, and yeah, I'm trying to help you avoid that. I love that they've got bosses for adding fender up front if you wanted to, and then in the back like a rear rack. No bottle cage bosses here on top of that down tube, but we do have them below. So not super accessible, but nice that they've got them, because you could put a folding lock there or something. Seems like there's also room here. The battery is pretty compact and it has a really cool design that we'll see later, but a lot of times there's this like anywhere adapter from SKS or some other companies. You can add a bottle cage or other accessory right there on the seat tube. So there are definitely some cheaper parts here, including the zoom handlebars and stem. Even just that external, the wiring we were talking about. Yeah, Shimano, but it's Tourney TX. That's pretty entry-level part. I love that they've got a external mount for a kickstand. It's not like right here at the center, because a lot of times that'll create pedal lock and the cranks will like collide. So the kickstand's going to be out of the way. You don't have to install it. And it does seem like kind of just a basic stand. Excited to see how that works out later. And then the seat post that we'll get to. Yeah, I guess some of the wires are internally routed. We do have like a reinforcement plate here, like a little bit of a gusset to make the frame a little bit stronger. 12 magnet cadence sensor down there. Like to see that Lasco crank. So there is some name brand stuff going on. But you know, it's a pretty basic drivetrain. Shimano Altus. Yeah, it's like Shimano Tourney, Altus, Alivio, Acera, and then maybe Dior. That's kind of the ranking. So this is still entry-level componentry. And we have this power cable with a quick disconnect, so you can do some rear wheel maintenance fairly easily. You don't have to leave it connected, just unplug it. This is still a little bit vulnerable. Sometimes I've seen these like derailleur guards that you can buy, like a steel derailleur guard. A lot of times e-bikes ship with those so that they don't get messed up in the box. That wasn't a problem here, and you can still get those aftermarket on like Amazon. And I might lube the chain a little bit. You'll notice that the chain actually is not on the chain ring right now, so during shipping it must have bounced off, and it's kind of, I'm gonna have to get my hands a little dirty in a minute. Oh, and maybe one more thought is, because these are deep dish, you're going to need longer stems for inner tubes. And if you do get a flat, because maybe you don't inflate these frequently, or you know, you hit a really sharp curb or something, you're going to have to get those tubes with the longer stems. Otherwise they won't stick out far enough and you're not going to be able to get on there. So that's just a word of kind of a proactive tip, so you don't get this thing, you're all excited, and then you get a flat tire and you're waiting weeks to receive the replacement tube off of Amazon or something like that. Most bike shops should have some sort of solution, but again, longer stems on those Presta valve inner tubes. Okay guys, I was just dealing with our first major snag. They've got these plastic pieces that fit on the end of the axle tube there. It's a 9mm axle with like a 4.5mm skewer, quick release, and they put these plastic things on it to protect both ends. But this one, somehow it got like melted in there. So see that little black thing? That was shoved way in there, and I was trying to get it out with like a lighter. Look at that, it's like pretty deep. It didn't come out when I pulled the plastic cap off, so I couldn't get the skewer through, and I had to put this on here, but I didn't want to damage it, so I got some foam and a hammer and I just whacked it through. I tried to loosen it up with like a lighter at first. I don't know if that helped at all. Just a heads up. So that's what was going on. On to the rest. Well guys, that just about wraps it up. Everything's installed. Kickstands on there, pedals. I put some poly grease on them, and they actually said left and right. They thread in this direction on both sides, so you don't accidentally unscrew the pedals while you're riding. I'm excited to get on this thing and go through some of the displays, take it for a ride. There are the 3 10mm spacers that kind of raise it up and give you a more upright, comfortable body position. 27.2mm seat post there if you wanted to upgrade to a seat post suspension. Wheels are spinning pretty nicely. While we've got it in the stand, I want to call out this 50 to 85 psi. So you can go a little lower for comfort, or if you weigh less. I'm only 135 pounds, so I like to ride, maybe I'd ride like 55 or 60. 85 if you're a heavier person, or maybe you've got that rear rack going, but definitely keep it at least 50 so you don't get a pinch flat, which is where you hit a sharp angle like a curb and then it pushes the tire into the rim and then it pinches the inner tube and can cause a flat. Definitely not very fun. These should be really sturdy wheels. I like how they've got the black spokes, but they're shorter because you've got the hub motor in the middle and the deep dish rims, so they're not quite as flexy. You're not getting quite as much vibration dampening there, but they're sturdier because the spokes don't have to be as long. So that's one of the trade-offs. These like aero rims, they're aerodynamic, they're cool, they give you that nice blue look, and again, reflective sidewalls on those tires for safety. I love that on an all black frame. The bike doesn't come with lights. You might have to get some aftermarket rechargeable lights to clip up here, maybe here on the seat post or back on a rack. Just things I think about, especially if you're in an urban environment. And yeah, I just love that. Look at the Lasco cranks, the pedals, pretty much everything on this bike is black. There are some extra wires up front because these are tech brake levers. They're mechanical brakes with motor inhibitors. So anytime you pull either brake lever, you're going to be stopping power to the motor. And that's really important when you have a cadence sensor. Down here you can see there's 12 magnets on that disc. And when they pass this little sensor, which, there it is. See, there's that little red LED. When they pass that sensor, that's what sends a signal to the motor to start and stop. So it's not quite as fluid or responsive. It's just not as dynamic as like a torque sensor or a multi-sensor that measures like wheel speed, pedal cadence, and pedal torque. This is just, it gets the job done, but 12 magnets is more than 6. That's what we used to have on e-bikes a number of years ago. 12 was like a big deal. So I appreciate that. And, you know, just coming back to that chain falling off, that's one of my concerns a little bit here. I mean, we do have the derailleur and it's sprung so that it's designed to kind of keep tension and keep that chain from slapping too much or falling off, but it is a possibility, and that's what we see here. So just kind of keep that in mind. They might have, it looks like this is in one of the lower gears for shipping, and this derailleur should be way down like this because the chain's stretched out versus if it was on one of these higher gears right there. Some of the other things I've noticed is this is a 44 tooth aluminum alloy chain ring. Looks like it has a replaceable chainring size here too with this spider, so you could potentially change the size on that. A smaller chain ring would give you a mechanical advantage, make it easier to climb. A larger one's going to allow you to hit and maintain higher top speeds. And then back here we've got a 14 to 28 tooth cassette spread, 7 sprockets. Back down there at that Shimano Altus, again, you know, decent. It's like one step up from the most basic entry level. Enough to help you climb, get around the city more easily if you live somewhere where it's hilly. This was my choice. You know, they do have the single speed, which is nice. That chain's probably not going to fall off. It might weigh a little bit less. There's just less complexity. But again, it's nice to have those gears in addition to the motor support. And you can see from here a Bafang designation on this thing, 36 volt, 250 watts. It's a planetary geared hub motor, very, very standard, but black. Just, again, really nice to see those accents all tied together like that. And some extra keys. I really appreciate that Propella. They left one kind of unpackaged, and it was right here in the instructions, and those instructions were pretty good. It has some good information about how to store the battery, keep it in a cool, dry location, try to keep it charged up at least half, especially if you're not using it for a while. If the cells get all the way down, it can sort of damage the chemistry a little bit. And it looks like we're not quite fully charged here. Charger is still red, but that's what it looks like. It's just a standard 2 amp charger, fairly lightweight, under 1.5 pounds. There are 3 and 4 amp chargers that go a little bit faster, but they tend to weigh a bit more. And for a battery that's not extremely high capacity, just 36 volt, 6.8 amp hours, 245 watt hours. A lot of batteries are now 500 watt hours. So this is kind of half that size, and it is a lot lighter, and it's compact. It leaves a little bit of extra space on the frame. It helps you to hit that $12.99 price point. But there's going to be a trade-off in range. And again, this bike doesn't have a throttle or anything. It's all pedal assist, so that's going to help you to extend the range a little bit. Okay, guys, so I got the battery with me. I just spoke to Ben, one of the founders of Propella, and I was asking him about this little USB like rubber cap. See that right there at the bottom? I thought that would be really cool to be able to take the battery off and use it for maybe charging your phone or running little portable speakers or something if you're camping. But the thing is, this isn't a very high capacity battery. And when I asked Ben about it, he was like, yeah, you know, that's actually, there's nothing under there. I was trying to pull it up and I was breaking my fingernails, and I was like, what's going on? So they disabled that after Propella 1.0 because apparently the USB was drawing current from the battery and it would drain it. And now they have a nicer battery management system, so it's not supposed to be as much of an issue, but they just decided, let's scrap that USB. It's a potential point of failure for us. It's something that could damage the battery, and these lithium-ion batteries, they're pretty fancy and they're a little bit more expensive, so they thought, like, let's go minimalist, which is sort of the theme of this bike, and they removed it. So anyway, I wanted to show you that and just talk about it in case you've seen it. This is what the mount looks like. I like that the bolts are spread pretty far apart here, so you've got, it's not just like a bottle cage mount like these. See how close these are? This is actually purpose built to be a little bit sturdier and spread the weight out. And then down there at the base, you can see those 4 pins that interface with those 4 slots, and you just sort of set it on like that. Okay, and then there's a little bit of a gap. We're going to have to slide it down. We just did that. And now, go to the other side of the bike, turn this key, and we're locked. That's it. That's how it works. It feels pretty secure. I mean, there's a little bit of play, but it seems pretty good. I'm excited to see how it rides. Hopefully it holds up all right. And then this is the look again. There's even room for like a frame bag. There's some really nice potential for this bike, like to build it up and make it into something special. Frankly, I'm impressed with the balance of cheaper parts that they've chosen to parts that look good, and then like a kind of a higher performance level, especially with the disc brakes and stuff. Yes, they're mechanical and that those cables can stretch just like your shifter cables over time, but it's nicer than rim brakes, in my opinion. They stay a little bit cleaner. They're up away from the ground like that. A cheaper part here is this square tapered spindle compared to like ISIS splined or something like that. 165 millimeter crank arms, by the way, so they're a little bit shorter. Might give you a more rapid pedal cadence. Interesting to see. I see 170 millimeters a lot. And this bike only comes in one frame size, and it's a little bit higher because of these 700C tires. So they're, 28 inch versus 27.5 or 26. That's going to give you a good, efficient rolling momentum. It lowers the attack angle down like this, so it spans cracks and stuff, and it doesn't run into obstacles. It sort of overcomes them a little bit easier. It spans gaps. Those are some of the qualities I appreciate. And then back to that, 32C here versus 28. So that's roughly, 28 by 1 5/8 inches by 1 1/4 inches. It's a little bit fatter than the older original Propellas, and just gives you a little bit more comfort and stability. Be interesting to see how this thing handles doing some no-hands riding. Hey guys, it's day 2. I spent some time riding last night and also took this nice path in the morning. Was able to speak with Ben, who is the founder, ask a couple of questions, because I noticed that the chainring here, this is 44 tooth, but he said they're moving to 46, so a bit larger. That's going to slow the bike down a little bit when you're starting, but give you potential for higher top speed. I did confirm that their maximum recommended speed is like 16.5 miles per hour versus 20 on most electric bikes. But I think that helps to extend the range, with the battery. He said it's also a reliability thing for the motor, and they just felt like that was enough, especially with a single speed option on this bike. So that was interesting to hear. Also, the crank arms here, they're 165 millimeters on this bike, but he said, they're actually going to be 170. And then, I was complaining about how this kickstand is mounted pretty close, and I'm actually continuing to hit my heel on it when I pedal. And he said, they're moving it back, maybe 1 inch. So that's really cool. I did weigh the bike, pretty impressive. 37.6 pounds, and the website says 37 pounds, so that's great. The battery pack, 3.3 pounds, and then the motor, 7.28 pounds. It's fairly well balanced. I weighed it from about here, and it didn't tip forward or back. At first, I was weighing on the saddle, and by the way, this is the stock saddle, so it is a little bit more sporty and narrower than the other one. I asked him about that, and he's like, we just sent you an extra saddle to see what you thought, and get your feedback. He made a point that, these rims, they are anodized blue, along with those little rings at the end of the grips. The blue doesn't match perfectly, but that's okay. And these rims, they're really nice. It's aerodynamic, but they do catch a little bit more wind from the side, which is something I think about a little bit. I like that the front wheel's quick release. You could take that off and turn the handlebars sideways and pop this in the back of your trunk if you wanted to, if you're traveling around and maybe you don't have a bike rack or something. And those bottle cage bosses, really nice. I haven't had a problem with derailment, but again, the drivetrain on this is a little bit more basic. Coming around to the other side, 300 millimeter seat post length, 27.2, so you could replace that with a suspension post. I might do that. It's actually felt pretty comfortable, and I've had a blast just riding along. This is a really smooth path, so everything feels pretty nice because I'm in a fancy part of town. But if you were in an area that was a little bit more bumpy, I'd probably start considering some of those comfort upgrades. I like the pedals here. They're lightweight. Cage style isn't my favorite for mountain bikes because you can lay them down and they start to get kind of bent and chewed up, but they look nice here. The internally routed cables, the square tapered bottom bracket. I asked Ben, is this sealed or, sealed bearings or what? And he couldn't really comment. Up here on the stem, You know, this is 90 millimeters. It's definitely, it's shorter. So I think it was 100 millimeters on their older bikes. There's a little bit of rise, 30 millimeters of rise in these handlebars, and then those 3 spacers to bring it up and back and give you a more comfortable body position. And it is comfortable. I was really impressed that my mom was able to hop on this thing and straddle it, and I'll show you that a little bit later. So coming back down here, we've got the mechanical disc brakes, 160 millimeter front and rear. They work pretty good. You know, you do have to pull with a little bit more hand effort, but when you do, they do cut power to the motor. So we've got those motor inhibitor cables and kind of a lot of cables up front, but they wrap them pretty nicely. And these are just like the press fit kind of plastic connectors, not quite as nice as metal threaded, but they are colored. So if you do disconnect them for whatever reason, you can get this thing put back together pretty easily. And then there's plenty of room right here on the stem and on the right side of the handlebar to add your phone, maybe use that for GPS or some speakers or just all kinds of fun accessories. No USB charging port options, however. I like that there's a little display here on the Shimano trigger shifters, so you can see what gear you're in if you're sort of a new rider. The little trigger up here only goes one way like that, but the big trigger offers 3 steps. So it's 1, 2, 3. There we go. So you can actually shift pretty efficiently, and it's kind of a sporty feel, you know? So I think that's pretty much everything about the bike. I wanted to run through the display panel a little bit here because it's got a little bit of depth, even though it's fairly compact. Give you a little overview of how that works. So once the battery is mounted, you can press this power button to get some feedback on how full it is. There's 4 green LEDs, so 25% increments. So we'll just press that M button. The display blinks to life pretty quickly. 4 more bars. So I was thinking like 25% steps, but I believe that the outside of that infographic also counts as a step. So maybe there are 5 total for 20% steps. Clock, 952 right now. Assist level, it always starts in 1, but you can arrow down to 0 and just use this like a regular bicycle. And because it's so lightweight and those tires are so efficient, it does pedal really nicely. This is a great just bicycle. Then you've got that assist, and the assist is pretty zippy. I was impressed with it. So anyway, we can go all the way up to 5 if we want. It's going to drain the battery faster, but it's going to give you more power for climbing and just accelerating. Speed and miles per hour right over there. If we hold the up arrow for a second, it says average speed, max speed. So there's some good depth there. Down at the bottom, it says odometer. If we tap the M button, it goes to trip meter. So that's kind of everything. There is walk mode if you press and hold down on that down arrow there. And that's kind of nice because, you know, with these narrower tires and potentially a single speed option from Propella, you could be walking, you know, through a park and feel like maybe the tire's going to sink in, and I don't really want to do that. Or you could add a rack with these bosses back here, and it might be loaded up and say, this is too heavy for the hill I'm on. Or maybe you just don't want to, you just want to relax or something, push the bike along. It's just nice to have walk mode. So I like that they've got that. If we hold the up and down arrows simultaneously, it goes into settings, and this is where you can set the clock time, which I did that earlier. And then 3, so I actually turned the brightness up all the way for when backlight is enabled. So you could take it down to 1 if you wanted, and that's cool because at night, you know, this could be shining right in your face if it's really dark out. So being able to take that down or even turn the backlighting off completely by holding the M and up, that's pretty nice. So I'm going to go to the next menu, miles per hour or kilometers per hour. Very cool. Change the units, and then we're back to the clock. So I'm going to hold M for a second, and it exits. And again, holding M and up does backlighting. It's hard to see because it's bright out right now, but yeah, it just kind of, it blinks on. If it was nighttime, I think that would be pretty cool to see. And then I wanted to show walk mode. So I'm holding the down arrow. See the little walk dude? There we go. And it's a little bit faster than my walk speed, and I have long legs, so I don't know, that might be something that's just sort of set the way it is, sort of default. You can't remove this display, you can't angle it to reduce glare, so I have been getting a little bit of glare. Thankfully, it's good filming conditions today. It's not too bright out, and people are just having a lovely morning, walking their dogs and stuff. I think I might hop on this thing and take a little ride. Okay guys, I'm going to start in level 5, the highest level of assist, because that's sort of what I always do. The truth is, I've been riding this bike in like level 1 and 2 the most, and even without assist. So that's kind of interesting. I love having the gears. I'm shifting gears constantly because I have some knee sensitivity, and I'm not into like those really hard, slow strokes. I like to spin to reduce some of my knee pain. I'm just going to stow that kickstand. It does have a nice little tab there. You could replace that stand with an adjustable length one, but this has worked okay. Hasn't been rattling too much. I'm just gonna hop on, and then those 12 magnets are gonna be listening for my pedal strokes. There we go. There we go, and we just hit the top speed pretty easily. We were up to around 17 miles per hour. I was talking to Ben and I was like, 16, is that really it? And he's like, yeah, 16 to 18. We've tried it a bunch of different ways and this is efficient. It helps to prolong the battery. And even frankly, I agree. I think it works pretty well here. I don't feel like I'm missing out too much. But then again, I'm not late to work. So, it is a trade-off. I'm gonna arrow down here, take it to level 1, maybe level 2 actually, because this is I've been using 2 a lot, and the motor's pretty quiet. It's pretty cool, like community garden. Okay guys, you're mounted to the seat post. It's a perfect vantage point to see the 250 watt planetary geared hub motor in the back from Bafang. Again, that's about 7.28 pounds. Pretty lightweight, compact, hides behind that cassette, 14 to 28 tooth, Shimano Altus derailleur up there, and then again, 46 tooth chainring that they're working on. This one's 44, so it's a little bit smaller. It's giving me a mechanical advantage when I pedal versus the new one. That's going to make it a little easier to go faster, and that's especially nice considering you do have a wide cassette here. Listen for that motor. I'm going to start off in level 5, so it's going to be the most pronounced, the most zippy, but it does sort of continue to wind down slowly after I stop pedaling, and that's because it's using a cadence sensor versus a torque sensor or a really fancy multi-sensor. Right there, about 16 and a half, 17 miles. I'm up to 20 just pedaling. It's not too difficult to get faster if you want. Nice. Disc brakes working well. It's a good setup, and I haven't heard the chain bouncing too much. I don't see any nicks down here, even in those higher gears where the chain comes closer to that chainstay. Part of the reason the motor starts so smoothly and is so quiet is because they're using a pure sine wave controller versus a square wave. So their older bikes use square wave, and it just kind of it buzzes a little bit more, and it's not as smooth to start. Even though this is a cadence sensor, sort of an on-off feel, it does start pretty smoothly. Look at this neat little creek. Just a beautiful area here. Oh boy. And then that's the, whoa boy. Then there's the larger wheel diameter, feeling pretty stable. No problem coasting with no hands like this. I am feeling the cracks a little bit. Hey guys, that's okay. You know, people out having fun. Hey guys, so I think that's about it. Man, those brakes really get you going when you kind of surprised. That was one-handed. Normally hydraulic brakes, I'm like really careful, but these were, you know, it's a brand new bike. They're definitely pretty grabby there. So anyway, and remember guys, before you go for those rides, you got to make sure those tires are pumped up, especially the narrow tires. Otherwise you could get a pinch flat. You're doing great, Mom. Look at that. Oh yeah. Check the tire pressure. Get it just right. Awesome. It's pretty quiet. Nice. How's it feel?
Great. Very comfortable.
Really
Very
quiet
comfortable.
too.
Extremely quiet.
You were just in level 2 as well.
Yes.
What did you think about the power?
Wait, like lots of power, so I turned it down.
You tried 5 and you were like,
Well, yeah, I think 2 is great and probably uses the battery up less.
You're right. Yeah, you get better range. I was pretty impressed because they've only got one frame size, and this is a high step, but it looked like you were able to get over.
Oh yeah, and I'm 5'3.5".
5'3.5". You're gonna, yeah, there we go. You're right there. Got a little bit of room.
Okay, like an inch.
That's awesome. And then for people who are a little bit taller, you can scoot the saddle back or flip the stem down and change the bars up and stuff. There's still some height adjustment, but I tried to get it right for your legs.
There's no quick way to do it. You have to.
No, they ship it with non-quick release here, which so people can't mess with your seat. It does have quick release up here, but you can get aftermarket parts that make it so it locks, so no one will like steal your stuff.
Nice pedals too.
Like that, yeah. We just replaced the pedals on my mom's bike earlier today, so she's like all about.
I'm all about pedals.
And it's light. Do you want to lift it up and see? Don't hurt yourself. But what do you think?
Yeah, it's nice. Not really heavy at all.
Compared to a lot of the other
Pretty
e-bikes we've
bike.
looked at. Yeah, it is really pretty, right?
Lovely, really nice.
Yeah, I always appreciate your input, Mom.
You're welcome.
Thanks for your help unboxing earlier.
You're welcome. Had a nice bike ride. Saw Mama and 2 fawns walk right across the trail.
Really?
On the bike trail, yeah.
Oh.
In those houses over by where we saw the blue heron. Right there.
Back on that bike trail.
Yeah.
That's
so they
wonderful.
just 2 little baby fawns and a mama.
That's one of the things. This is a class 1 electric bike, so there's no throttle or anything. It's just pedal assist, and it's allowed on the most trails because it's more like a bike. They aren't as worried about people zipping around.
Well, yeah, you can't. I mean, that could almost look like a water bottle to me.
Yeah, it does. It blends in a lot. And the weight's like low and center. That's the motor. So the motor's pretty efficient here. Disc brakes, yep, they're mechanical. So yours are hydraulic. What did these feel like to you?
Oh, fine. Very smooth. Very smooth. Not
job done.
as responsive as my bike. But
You have to like use a little bit more hand strength maybe?
yeah, just a little bit more. Not a lot.
Thank you
Good.
so much.
You're welcome.
For the full written review, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com, where I've recorded all the specs, measurements, everything. You can compare this to the last model or to other single speeds and kind of city urban bikes like this. I hope you have fun out there, ride safe, and I'll see you next time.